Hey everyone, in today's video we'll be focusing on world building. There are many key elements in our game that I've spoken about in past videos, like it being set on a magical train, working for a cat, and fighting manifested ingredient enemies that you have to defeat to brew tea. But we still have work to do to really cement these ideas into the world, which will help create the identity of Caddy's tea service. So oh, is that Caddy talking to me? The Steam page. Alright, I also recently set up a Steam page for Caddy's tea service. I plan to keep the page updated as we continue to progress and develop the game, but feel free to wishlist the game if you'd like to grab it when it releases. But without further ado, let's get started. One of the key gameplay elements is that we use combat to prepare our ingredients and cook our teas. The powerful energy of the train is meant to manifest these ingredients into existence, and at the moment when the enemy appears, they just kind of plop into existence and start beating the world. I wanted to create a new enemy spawning animation, so I got started on my draft, and for a point of reference, I used a lilybud enemy to make the animation around. One piece of lilybud would fade into existence and drop to the ground, then it would slowly form the hat of the enemy and he would lift up his head and stand up, coming to life. Then I made one where the ingredients would descend slowly, piling up, and the enemy would just jump out ready for battle. After making these drafts, I realized I kind of wanted to look like they were coming to life through some magical energetic force. So I thought about one of my favorite shows, Card Capture Sakura, where she uses a magical staff allowing her to summon magic circles to capture her runaway cloak cards. These magic circles are not only visually striking, but also makes it seem like she's really activating her powers. She's just so epic. This animation was the closest thing to what I envisioned, and I thought it would be cool to make a unique animation for every enemy, but I think it's just not feasible, so I took out the falling ingredients and just stuck with the magic circles so I could use it with every enemy. The enemies all spawn from these dispensers, so to make it look like the ingredient was awakening, I made a light spirit ascend from the center. At first it had this very wispy look, which looked a little too ghostly for me, so I made this smooth spirit orb ascend from it instead. It then vanishes and chooses a location to descend into the ground, causing a ripple which becomes the outer ring of the magic circle. I just went ham on the symmetry tool and created an abstract pattern inside, which I usually like the look of, but it just didn't look very interesting in this case. So instead of using patterns, I decided to use different symbols inside the circle. Since the magic stems from Caddy, I took part of his traits and used it on the design. On the left and right side, I made these symbols which represent Caddy's necklace, and there are 4 fins on the sides like his fish fins. I like how this time around there were individual pieces with ample gaps between the symbols compared to the crowded abstract patterning I had before. I tried out different formations and timing for the creation of the magic circle, and it was really hard to pick which one I liked better, because I liked how seamless and smooth the left one was, but the right one kinda has more oomph to it because of the different timings. So I put the 2 designs in the game to get a better view of the animation, and I would not actually notice the left one as much as the right one because of how smooth it was. It was a lot more impactful because the different timings created interesting shapes with the formation before it was fully complete, catching my eye more often and made it easier for me to notice that the enemies were spawning. When the formation ends, the keyhole in the middle twists to unlock the power of the ingredient so the enemy can spawn. And this worked a lot better with the second formation I made because it was like the keyholes were appearing for the key to turn and unlock them. And after it is unlocked, it'll send out a final ripple that breaks the magic circle as it has completed its duty. Now let's check it out in game. I think the concept of the ingredients forming into enemies has really come to life, adding an extra hint of magic into the game. It's a lot more easy to anticipate when the enemies are about to spawn, and now they can't just jump scare us anymore. Who is this guy? What's this? She dropped a chrysanthemum? It's been a while since we've introduced any new enemies to the game, so for the next one, I went with a very popular ingredient for teas, the chrysanthemum. Since we've got a close and far range enemy, it's just a rite of passage for the next one to be mid-range. I wanted her to have a dash attack, so I originally made her very tall to make her hitbox larger. However, the direction completely changed when I thought about how there were different colored chrysanthemums, so I thought it would be really cute to have 2 different twin sister chrysanthemum enemies. I didn't want them to take up too much room on the level if I paired them together, so I scaled down their sizes. I wanted to keep the designs fairly similar so that they would look related, so I made their 2 hair buns out of chrysanthemum. The white chrysanthemums are still in its bud and has a calm, relaxed expression, whereas the yellow chrysanthemum is fully bloomed and has an energetic look ready to fight, which I felt was fitting for her attack style. In the future, we'll come back to the white chrysanthemum design, but for today, we'll be focusing on the yellow chrysanthemum. When I think of flowers, I think of elegance, so I wanted her to have a more poised fighting style. For her idle pose, she is relaxed, standing on one leg, balancing herself with ease. And when she walks, her animation is inspired from a Cheng style Bagua Zheng, which is a form of martial arts. I wanted her to move around cautiously in order not to attract too much attention before she whips out a surprise lunge attack. On the initiation of her attack, I had her tilt down, compacting herself to show she is getting ready to attack. This also gives the player some time to anticipate it. And then she springs forward into a spinning motion covering quite some distance. I had lots of fun making the spinning animation because you only need to draw a few rotations as the movement goes by so quickly. To make it look like she was bracing herself, I gave her this cute expression. I originally had this weird guideline because I wanted her to dip down and then twist up at the end, but it looked really rough, so I just simplified the design and made her move in a straight line instead. I made sure she followed this new guideline to help her movement stay consistent. To help make the spinning more dynamic, I had her tunic flare out, which also helped make her hitbox larger, which is what I wanted. I also added a wind that span around her for some added effect. I think she's a great addition to the level because she applies more pressure to the player and her timing feels less predictable than the Lilybud and the Ginkgo enemy. She's also one of the more fun enemies because I just like watching her zip around through the level, and it's really satisfying to stop her when she's mid-lunge, so it feels kind of more technical, waiting for her to attack before you attack. I do plan on making more enemies to make levels fun, and defeating them are a great sub-goal, but for our levels, we still need an overarching goal to achieve. As a tea apprentice, it is important to know how well you've performed at the end of the day, to see whether or not you may progress to the next level. So I wanted to design a score sheet to give to players feedback on how they did. First, I decided how I wanted to lay out the setting for the score sheet. Since Caddy is the team master guiding Faye, I sat them at the study to make it look like they were discussing the feedback. Then I panned the camera to the right to give space for the score sheet. I then went in Photoshop and created a draft for all the primary information I wanted to show the player. I used to work at a restaurant, and at the end of the day there was this money cash count sheet that we used to calculate all of the profits that we made, and another sheet for all of the restaurant's expenses. And the sheet was all just words and numbers, which is very practical, but for my score sheet, you bet there's gonna be pictures. Like, I'm always going to try to convey things through imagery rather than words, because I don't really like to read. Like, if I'm at a restaurant and there's no photos on the menu, I'm just gonna walk out. But no, I'm kidding. Like, that's what I'm thinking in my head whilst everyone has already picked their orders, and I'm still looking. It's just so much easier for me to digest information when there's accompanying pictures. And sometimes I don't even have to read that information, I can just look at the pictures. So I started setting up my table and made a category called Orders Delivered, which holds all the profits that were made from that round. It lists all the different rank teas and how many were successfully delivered to the customers. The amount will be written next to the rank, and their profit will be shown on the right. Next to it, I made the deduction section, which holds the number of lost tables defined by how many customers left without receiving their tea, and the number of burnt teas are also counted as it is a waste of the train's resources. This punishment makes it harder to receive a higher score, encouraging players to be more mindful and careful when making the teas. Underneath each section, I tallied up the results on the second row, and the accumulation of the two totals will make the final score on the right. I also added a dialog box to the bottom of the score so the scorer can leave comments based on the results and react accordingly. At the top there's 3 stars, which will indicate how well the player performed. 1 star is average, 2 star is good, and 3 is excellent. If the player doesn't meet the total of the first star, they will have to repeat the level until they get at least 1 star before unlocking the next level. Then I started drafting the design of the score sheet. Because this game has a lot of traditional elements, I thought an old scroll would be a great fit to display the score on. There's even a scroll behind Faye in the study, but when I made the simple scroll design, it didn't really match the game. So I made a fancier scroll to hopefully match the background, but it didn't really look right either. When I showed my friend, they said that although I had traditional elements in my game, it still has quite a newer feel. So I tried a more modern design inspired by the bill holder, and it fit a lot better. When it came to rendering, I knew I wanted to have a pattern on the bill holder. In Chinese culture, there's a tradition for events such as New Year's and birthdays, where we have these red pockets which we put money into and give to others in celebration. These red pockets can have lots of different designs, but I personally really like the ones that puff out. So I wanted my bill holder to have a slightly 3D carved pattern engraved on it. I knew I wanted the pattern to have flowers, and since the bill calculates money, I wanted one that symbolized fortune. So that's why I went with the orchid, as they symbolize wealth. I decided to keep the icons the same, as they are objects that have already been established in the game world, and because the player has already made an association with them, I felt like it was clearer to keep them instead of drawing a digital icon. And I love the look of digital art mixed with pixel art, so I was gonna do it anyways. And when we put it into the game, we made this cute opening animation before it starts calculating the results. Now, when the level timer ends, you'll move to the score sheet scene where you'll see the results. The scorer will take out the pen and start writing the calculations. I love how the numbers increment. Rob did a really good job, and for this round we got 270 points, and since we succeeded 200 points, we get at least 2 stars. Now with the score sheet done, the player has an overall goal to achieve, which is to make enough points to move on to the next level, and the basic gameplay loop has been created. And players will be able to further progress in the game as we make more levels. A very crucial part of building a game's identity is having a logo. I've been putting it off for so long now, but I do feel like this name has grown on me, and I want to use the logo for promotional material like TikTok and Steam and the start page. So today's the day. With the logo's typography, I wanted to see how I could play around with the words Caddy's tea service. Unfortunately, I quickly realized that every word is quite crucial to the title. Like if I emphasize Caddy's, that doesn't really mean anything on its own as it's the cat's name, and it also can't really stand alone because of the apostrophe S. So it's kind of conjoined to the word tea service. And if I just emphasize tea service, it just looks bland. So each word had to be emphasized for the title to really shine. I'm better at illustrations than typography, so when designing the logos, I wanted to incorporate at least 2 of these 3 components: a teapot, caddy, and a sword. The teapot represents the tea service, caddy represents our tea master cat, and the sword represents combat, which is a main mechanic of the game. In the end, I liked these 2 options the most. This one was epic, and I felt like it really bridged the tea making and combat aspect of the game well. And the wave of tea is dramatic and looks a bit chaotic, reminiscent of the gameplay. But the design is a bit disjointed from each other, making it feel a bit incomplete and incohesive with the whole logo. And on the other hand, I have this much cuter design where Caddy is peeping out of the teapot, which really encapsulates the words Caddy's tea service, and I could almost imagine this drawing hanging outside on a wooden sign in front of the tea house. I didn't want to give up on the sword component, so I tried to make the tea a sword, but it was off-balancing the logo and distracting the overall design, and it's just too small to look epic, so I sadly had to scrap the sword. I like the overall harmony and flow of this logo more than the other, and the cat inside the teapot is a pretty memorable silhouette, and I can really see it being the first thing that pops into people's mind when thinking of the words Caddy's tea service, so I went with this. I found some fonts that I really liked from Adobe Fonts, and they have a lot of commercial use typography, and I found 2 that I really liked. I laid out all the fonts that I thought would be a good fit for the logo, picking some specifically for the words Caddy and tea service. I narrowed down the options to these 2 fonts, because I like how round and playful this font is for Caddy, and I like the simple but classic look this font is for the tea service, so I put them together to make my ideal title. I wanted to create more harmony between the 2 different fonts, so I removed the round accents that Caddy had and smoothed them out into a more curved shape to match the font below. I saw how this font did the D's, and I immediately thought the rounded shape looked like the sides of Caddy's necklace. It's a pretty big part of his character design, so I thought nestling it inside of his name would be perfect. His necklace is covered by the teapot as well, so it's a good way to subtly bring it back in. I also made that apostrophe into a dried tea leaf to reference the ingredients used in the game. What really drew me to the font for tea service was the R, which had a really long appendage, which reminded me of a cat's tail. So basically all the things that you can't see in Caddy on this illustration because of the teapot is sprinkled around the title. To make the title stand out from the illustration, I changed the base color to a white and gave it a brown outline. I feel like this title heals my inner child because it reminds me of the Harvest Moon logo that I love dearly. I also made the lock gold and the tea leaf green just to accent them from the title. When rendering, I did my usual coloring style, but I'm not sure if I'm fully sold on it because it might be a bit too detailed for the clean, bold text that I went with. So please let me know what you guys think. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the final design. I try to cram in as much details into the logo to build a stronger identity for the title, so I hope you guys like it. Now that I finally have a logo, I was so stoked to start working on the start screen. Actually, change of plans. This start screen was probably one of my most difficult projects to execute, and is the reason why this video ended up taking so long to release. But I truly love how it turned out, especially with the new logo. As you guys know, I like to ramble on about all the small details and my process, and I just think there's not enough time in this video for me to do that. So I'm gonna make a separate video for it instead. But that's about it for today's video. I hope you guys liked it. The world of Caddy's tea service has become a lot more concrete with these new updates, and I'm just so happy that we finally got a solid gameplay loop down. Because of this, Robert and I have been able to playtest the game a lot more and see what things need to be improved upon. You may have even noticed some changes sprinkled throughout the video. In the next video, we will be focusing on making the game more fun by improving the gameplay mechanics and updating the combat system. Thank you to June Spellman for leaving this suggestion in the comments. I've decided to create a Patreon for anyone who's interested in further supporting the development of Caddy's tea service. If that sounds like something that you're interested in, I'll leave a link to my Patreon down in the description. Thank you so much for watching this video and getting this far. If you guys like this video, make sure to leave a like. For more content, subscribe to the channel and ring that bell to get the latest updates of everything Caddy's tea service. And that's all for today. See you in the next one. Bye bye!